Hello, I'm Michelle Thielen, and I am the Coordinator of Gifted and Talented Education for the Marana Unified School District. I've been in education for over 30 years, and I have lived all the changes in reading instruction. I have taught the whole language approach, then I taught the phonics, then I experienced the battles between the whole language camps and the phonics folks. I have lived through many ELA adoptions, basal readers, balanced literacy, and the many interpretations of the science of reading. Through it all, though, I have to say, kids have learned to read. They've discovered new worlds through books, and they've made best friends with the characters in books. My purpose is to share with you ways that our advanced readers' needs can be met in everyday classrooms. I'd like you to stop for a moment and think about your earliest memories of books, of reading. Think about the enjoyment you might have found in reading picture books. Did you find any friends in the books that you read? Did you find authors that you just couldn't get enough of their stories? I personally do remember my Beverly Cleary books and Henry Huggins and my Laura Ingalls Wilder books and the characters from those stories. They were like my friends. I was a military child and moved all over the world, but my one constant were my friends that I made in books. My earliest memories of reading, though, I will say, came from Dr. Seuss. I can remember eagerly waiting every month for the Dr. Seuss book to arrive in the mail and then sitting down with my parents and reading those books and just the enjoyment that came from that. Now, I'd like you to think about your earliest memories of reading in school. Now, my generation learned to read with Dick and Jane, and our classrooms looked very different from the classrooms today. Kindergarten was all for play. Yes, we did have times where the teacher gathered us around and read to us, but reading ourselves was reserved for first grade. And I can remember walking into a first grade classroom, much like the classrooms pictured here, and getting excited to start to read and have the stories come alive to me. Like I said, I remembered the authors and the series who became my friends. To this day, I still gather books from the same authors. And as soon as an author publishes a new book, I'm right there getting it. So let's not lose sight of what our goal of reading instruction actually is, and it is to create lifelong lovers of reading, reading for information and reading for pleasure. But let's also acknowledge that personal philosophies of reading instruction are, in fact, very personal. I read recently that it could run very deep in teachers' souls. So now I'd like you to think about yourself today. Do you consider yourself a reader? What are you currently reading? What books are on your nightstand? How do you share the importance of reading with your students? Do you model reading for enjoyment? Do you also read when your students are reading independently or when you have silent reading time in your class? When I was working on my reading endorsement, I remember a college professor who told us that it was very important for our students to see us value books, not just talk about valuing books, but to actually see us enjoying a good book. Now, with all the hype about the importance of self care in the media, how do you carve out time for reading for pleasure? When I present this presentation live to rooms full of teachers, this is the point where I get a little chuckle. Like, how are we supposed to find time to read? We're so busy with all the things that happen in our classrooms. I will tell you that my discovery over the pandemic was the joy that can come from listening to books. And so when I find that I have a difficult time carving out time to sit down with a good book, I realize that I can find those very same books on Audible or even through the Pima County Public Library or any public library using the Libby app. And so I've frequently have books downloaded, and I use my time alone in the car when I'm traveling from school to school to get lost in a really good book. So when we ourselves talk about the importance of literacy and model it in front of our students, then maybe they will become to believe us that literacy is vital for our lives. So before we jump into our presentation, I'd like to share with you some learning goals. We're going to talk about who are our gifted and talented readers and what are their instructional needs. We'll take some time to look at the myths and truths of gifted readers. Then we'll have a section where we talk about the components of a reading program for gifted and talented readers. And then we'll close with taking a look at some resources that are available to provide teachers with ideas for books that are appropriate for our gifted readers.